Okay, so this is my lesson plan for the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave of 1845 by Frederick Douglass. It is for the 8th grade English Language Arts literacy. I'll be teaching at Dermont Schools, so this will be for the 8th grade. My Common Core standards that I've chosen are RL 82, which is determine a theme or central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course of the text, including the relationship to the characters, setting, and plot. And I've also paired that with Social Studies, Era 4, which is the expansion and reform of 1801 through 1861. Students will analyze the period of expansion and reform in the United States, and that's further broken down into 4.1.8.6, which is to evaluate the historical significance of individuals, groups, and events. And that is standard 6 for the ERA. My objectives for this lesson will be that the learner will be able to identify and demonstrate an understanding of slavery in relation to the text, mainly to be able to identify how slavery formed the relationships in Frederick Douglass's life, and the way slavery impacted his life, not only his life, but other characters, in the setting and the plot, how it all relates together. And also to be able to recognize the historical significance of slavery and its impact. I have chosen these objectives because they are part of the Common Core standards for this grade level, but also for the following reasons. And these are broad, but I have a little bit of a breakdown as to specifics. To assist in the development of higher order thinking skills, one way would be for students to look at the rhetoric and grammar of a different time period versus today's. 2 is to expand on the student's previous knowledge of subject matter. All students in the 8th grade should have at least a generalized subject matter of slavery, and so this will help expand on that. One way specifically is through this text. Most students have a generalized knowledge of what a plantation slave was, but in the text it also discusses what a city slave is, and so that would be one way it would expand their knowledge, and also work back to number 1, help them think about the difference in the two and how they're comparable and how they can contrast. Also to introduce literary work that is relatable to the student, geographically, historically, and demographically, specifically with my students. For one, being in the South and the Delta particularly, slavery is always more generalized with the South, even though slavery was not just a Southern thing. But this will also help them, relate because they are in the Delta and in the South. And demographically, because the demographics of my school are primarily African American, this gives them a relatable work to them as a heritage, and also can make, in one way, relate back to number 1 and giving them the opportunity to think about how things have changed so much, primarily for African Americans in the South today versus then. And then number 4 is to challenge students to increase their awareness of historical situations and the impact those situations had on society as a whole. One of the main things with this narrative is not only a national but also a human importance of life. That's one of the main themes that is kind of recurrent through the whole piece of work, and I think it'll give students the opportunity to realize that. Now moving on to section 2, which would be the student grouping. How will you group students for instruction? Upon introducing the literary work and goals associated with the unit of study, I would like to use whole group instruction with my students. Whole group will be utilized for up to 20 minutes, so the text can be read aloud and commentary or general information can be provided to ensure student understanding of the text, especially with dealing with a piece of literature that is from a while back. There needs to be some relation there, and so by reading aloud, whether it be me reading or whether it be the student reading, it would give us the opportunity to make those differences come together for them as far as word usage, maybe context of stuff. After reading aloud, the students will be placed into groups of 2 to 3 students for small group activity. Those predetermined groups are based on the student's academic level as well as their work habits. And I chose this because, of course, strong reader, weak reader can help, but also a focused worker and a less focused worker. Sometimes you can draw peers in to better study habits if they're working alongside someone who has the better study habits. And so that would be one of my goals. It may be unrealistic, but it's something I think I would like to try. The activity assigned will serve as an evaluation tool to check for understanding of the text and general themes. This would maybe be like a definition type thing where they look up definitions and pair words from then to today, or also maybe just a standard worksheet to talk about, to make sure review from yesterday and make sure that what we read today is kind of tied together and that they're getting the grasp all around. Or it could be just some small project of, from what we read today, put in your own words, and as a group, let's put in your own words, and then when we come back, we'll discuss that. At the conclusion of my activity, students will come together as a whole to review the daily lesson, to offer feedback, and to ask questions. This would be if they did some type of generalization where they went in and took what we read and then they had to transpose it back to what they think it means. Then they could offer that feedback or their commentary at that time. And to conclude the lesson, I would evaluate each individual student's understanding through an exit ticket. Collaborative work is great, and they must complete that and participate in that. But I also want to make sure that they're not depending on their partner for all the answers. And so an exit ticket at that point would be a great tool for me to use to make sure that each individual student is grasping the concept. I have chosen to utilize the whole group, small group, and individual methods. The whole group method will be most effective while reading aloud. This will allow me the opportunity to assist with difficult word pronunciations, define unknown terms, add commentary, and provide information that students need to know in order to better understand the text. The small group of 2 to 3 students during the activity promotes collaboration among peers for completion of the task, and it encourages a higher order of thinking skills. And by using this procedure, I will be able to assess my students and their level of understanding more efficiently. On the methods of instructional strategies, the methods that I've chosen to use while covering this lesson would include the read aloud with discussion, me reading as well as the students taking turns reading, modeling in regards to main ideas, effects on characters, and what characters might be feeling or thinking. Especially with this form of text, there's a lot of feelings that are being evoked, and I want to, kind of lead them down the right road, but also not shutting them down to what they think as well. Small group activity, report back sessions for the daily review of the lesson, for feedback and for question and answers, and then for individual evaluation. The read aloud with discussion method will be used because it will be the best way to ensure students are reading the material, and the discussion allows for information to be provided as needed. The model method provides me with the opportunity to show students how to relate to the characters and the events, and how the events might be affecting the characters and their thoughts. The small group activity will allow me to work closer with students as I can move around the classroom and help answer more generalized questions that they might have. And it will also allow me to provide insight on how students are interacting with each other, and if those interactions are successful, or if there's any problems in those interactions, things that I can do to help those interactions flow more smoothly. And then the report back session permits me to answer questions, to hear thoughts from the groups, and redirect any misconceptions they might have. Misconceptions, I think, will be more prevalent because of the time period of the information versus modern day translation of what it could be. So I want to make sure that they are reading this piece of work and getting it for face value and not misconstruing what is actually being said in the text, and to kind of bridge that gap between 1845 and now. And then also the individual evaluation affords me the opportunity to see if each student is mastering the material, and if not, what areas I need to revisit with instruction, things that we need to go back and touch on, or go back and really discuss to make sure that everyone's on the same playing field and that everyone is understanding the generalized concepts of what's being taught and what is meant to be accomplished. So that is steps 1 through 3 of my lesson plan, and I hope I did what I was supposed to. Thank you.